What do you think? You come here? No? Okay, that's fine. Good evening, everybody. Hope you all are having a good day so far. Happy Tuesday. All right. Get your everything's on the up and up. Ugh. Okay. Happy Tuesday, Miss Donna. The name of the book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. And at the moment we're about halfway through at the moment. So, but if anybody is new, actually, first of all, let me know with a thumbs up or likes or anything. If you can hear me well enough, let me know. I'm pretty sure I've got my volume up enough. Excellent. Okay, good. Good. All right, so we'll give it a few minutes. We'll give it till about 5 after for anybody to join on. Forgive my hair this evening. Had a long day. Needed a hot shower to just wash the world off. So I'm like, this is what we're getting this evening, so. Okay. Kitty, do not knock my camera over. Get up here. Come on. Get up here. Be a good boy. Don't knock mommy's camera over. Good? You okay? Pick a spot. Pick a spot and chill. We have 3. Oh, thank you. Come here. Oh, this is one of them. This is Mr. Who. You say hi, Papa? You say hello? Say hello. And I've got another cat over here at the edge of the bed, but if I try and reach and pull him over to me, I'll pull a muscle in my back. He's a bit chunky. Oh, thank you so much. You hear that? You're cute and adorable. Yes, you're cute and adorable. All right. Well, it is 5 after, so I'll go ahead and we'll get started. Um, do we have any new people in the group at the moment, or is everyone kind of, have you guys been here from the first reading? I'll give a synopsis regardless, but I just kind of want to get a head count of who's been here and who's new. Danny! Hello, hello, new people. Oh my goodness, how exciting. Oh, have you never seen you've never seen live readings? Okay, well, welcome. Excellent. And yes, Cece, Deborah, yes, yes, yes. Donna, that's okay. That's okay, Miss Donna. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So the book, All the Light We Cannot See, is based in World War II, and we are basically following along the storyline between two people. The first one being a young Parisian girl, a blind Parisian girl named Marie Laure, and her father, who lived and worked in Paris, and who works at the National Museum of Natural History. And he is a locksmith. And when the Germans took over France, when they invaded, he and Marie Laure fled Paris, and they made it out to the countryside to her great uncle Etienne's house in a town called Saint Malo. And at the moment, Marie Laure's father has been taken prisoner, by the Nazis, and so we're kind of getting ready to see what's going to become of him. And so Marie Laure is living with her uncle at the moment, and we are also following along the story of a young German boy named Werner, and by extension, kind of his little sister Jutta, who are both orphans and who grew up in a town called Zollverein, Germany. And Werner is very good at tinkering, and he's great at math, and he's good at mechanics and putting things together. And so he has been more or less conscripted into the German military force. He's currently going to school to learn how to basically seek out and find the enemy. So, but we are just about ready to see these two young people find one another. So we're going to get to that part of the story, and we're going to see what happens with Marie Laure back with her uncle. We're going to see what happens with her uncle. We're going to see what happens with her dad. So, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, also, all of my other readings, I have them recorded, and I'm actually going to be posting them on my, not Facebook page, on my YouTube page. So if you've missed basically the first half of the reading, you will have the opportunity to catch up if you would like to do that. So just bear that in mind. So, okay, so here we go. Prisoner. One February morning, the cadets are roused from their beds at 2 a.m. and driven out into the glitter. In the center of the quadrangle, torches burn. Keg-chested Bastien waddles out with his bare legs showing beneath his coat. Frank Volkheimer emerges from the shadows, dragging a tattered and skeletal man in mismatched shoes. Volkheimer sets him down beside the commandant, where a stake has been driven into the snow. Methodically, Volkheimer ties the man's torso to the stake. A vault of stars hangs overhead. The collective breath of the cadets mingles slowly, nightmarishly above the courtyard. Volkheimer retreats. The commandant paces. You boys would not believe what a creature this is. What a foul beast. A centaur. An Untermensch. Everyone cranes to see. The prisoner's ankles are cuffed, and his arms bound from wrists to forearms. His thin shirt has split at the seams, and he gazes into some middle distance with hypothermic slackness. He looks Polish, Russian maybe. Despite his fetters, he manages to sway lightly back and forth. Bastien says, "This man escaped from a work camp, tried to violate a farmhouse and steal a liter of fresh milk. He was stopped before he could do something more nefarious." He gestures vaguely beyond the walls. "This barbarian would tear out your throats in a second if we let him." Since the visit to Berlin, a great dread has been blooming inside Werner's chest. It came gradually, as slow-moving as the sun's passage across the sky, but now he finds himself writing letters to Yuto, in which he must skirt the truth, must contend that everything is fine when things do not feel fine. He descends into dreams in which Frederick's mother mutates into a leering, small-mouthed demon and lowers Dr. Hauptmann's triangles over his head. 1,000 frozen stars preside over the quad. The cold is invasive and mindless. "This look?" Bastien says, and flourishes his fat hand. "The way he's got nothing left? A German soldier never reaches this point. There's a name for this look. It's called circling the drain." The boys try not to shiver. The prisoner blinks down at the scene as if from a very high perch. Volkheimer returns carrying a clattering raft of buckets. 2 other seniors uncoil a water hose across the quadrangle. Bastien explains. First, the instructors, then upperclassmen. Everyone will file past and soak the prisoner with a bucket of water. Every man in the school. They start. One by one, each instructor takes a full bucket from Volkheimer and flings its contents at the prisoner a few feet away. Cheers rise into the frozen night. At the first 2 or 3 dousings, the prisoner comes awake, rocking back on his heels. Vertical creases appear between his eyes. He looks like someone trying to remember something vital. Among the instructors in their dark capes, Dr. Hauptmann goes past, his gloved fingers pinching his collar around his throat. Hauptmann accepts his bucket and throws a sheet of water and doesn't linger to watch it land. The water keeps coming. The prisoner's face empties. He slumps over the ropes, propping him up. His torso slides down the stake, and every now and then Volkheimer comes out of the shadows, looming fantastically huge, and the prisoner straightens again. The upperclassmen vanish inside the castle. The buckets make a muted, frozen clanking as they are refilled. The 16-year-olds finish. The 15-year-olds finish. The cheers lose their gusto, and a pure longing to flee floods Werner. Run. Run. 3 boys until his turn. 2 boys. Werner tries to float images in front of his eyes, but the only ones that come are wretched. The hauling machine above Pit 9, the hunched miners walking as if they dragged the weight of enormous chains, the boy from the entrance exams trembling before he fell, everyone trapped in their roles, orphans, cadets, Frederick, Volkheimer, the old Jewess who lives upstairs, even Jutta. When his turn arrives, Werner throws the water like all the others, and the splash hits the prisoner in the chest, and a perfunctory cheer rises. He joins the cadets waiting to be released. Wet boots, wet cuffs, his hands have become so numb they do not seem his own. 5 boys later, it is Frederick's turn. Frederick, who clearly cannot see well without his glasses, who has not been cheering when each bucketful of water finds its mark, who is frowning at the prisoner as though he recognizes something there. And Werner knows what Frederick is going to do. Frederick has to be nudged forward by the boy behind him. The upperclassman hands him a bucket, and Frederick pours it on the ground. Bastien steps forward. His face flares scarlet in the cold. "Give him another." Again, Frederick sloshes it onto the ice at his feet. He says in a small voice, "He is already finished, sir." The upperclassman hands over a 3rd pail. "Throw it," commands Bastien. The night steams, the stars burn, the prisoner sways, the boys watch, the commandant tilts his head. Frederick pours the water onto the ground. "I will not." Plague du Mole. Marie Laurey's father has been missing without a word for 29 days. She wakes to Madame Manec's blocky pumps climbing to the 3rd floor, the 4th, the 5th. Etienne's voice on the landing outside his study. Don't. He won't know. She is my responsibility. Some unexpected steel emerges in Madame Manec's voice. I cannot stand by one moment longer. She climbs the last flight. Marie Laurey's door creaks open. The old woman crosses the floor and places her heavy boned hand on Marie Laurey's forehead. You're awake? Marie Laurey rolls herself onto the corner and speaks through the linens. Yes, madame. I'm taking you out. Bring your cane. Marie Laurey dresses herself. Madame Manec meets her at the bottom of the stairs with a heel of bread. She ties a scarf over Marie Laurey's head, buttons her coat all the way to the collar, and opens the front door. Morning in late February, and the air smells rainy and calm. Marie Laurey hesitates, listening. Her heart beats 2, 4, 6, 8. Hardly anyone is out yet, dear, whispers Madame Manec, and we are doing nothing wrong. The gate creaks. One step down, now straight on. That's it, yes. The cobbled street presses up irregularly against Marie Laurey's shoes, and the tip of her cane catches, vibrates, catches again. A light rain falls on rooftops, trickles through runnels, beads up on her scarf. Sound ricochets between the high houses. She feels, as she did in her first hour here, as if she has stepped into a maze. Far above them, someone shakes a duster out a window. A cat mews. What terrors gnash their teeth out here? What was Papa so anxious to protect her from? They make one turn, then a second. Then Madame Manec steers her left where Marie Laurey does not expect her to, where the city walls, furred with moss, have been scrolling along unbroken, and they're stepping through a gateway. Madame? They pass out of the city. Stairs here, mind yourself. 1 down, 2, there you are, easy as cake. The ocean right in front of her. So close all this time. It sucks and booms and splashes and rumbles. It shifts and dilates and falls over itself. The labyrinth of St. Malo has opened onto a portal of sound larger than anything she has ever experienced. Larger than the Jardin des Plantes, than the Seine, larger than the grandest galleries of the museum. She did not imagine it properly. She did not comprehend the scale. When she raises her face to the sky, she can feel the 1,000 tiny spines of raindrops melt onto her cheeks, her forehead. She hears Madame Manec's raspy breathing, and the deep sounding of the sea among the rocks, and the calls of someone down the beach echoing off the high walls. In her mind she can hear her father polishing locks, Dr. Giffard walking along the rows of his drawers. Why didn't they tell her it would be like this? That's Monsieur Radon calling his dog, says Madame Manec. Nothing to worry about. Here's my arm. Sit down and take off your shoes. Roll up your coat sleeves. Marie Laurey does as she is told. Are they watching? The Bolshes? So what if they are? An old woman and a girl? I tell them we're digging clams. What could they possibly do? Uncle says they've buried bombs in the beaches. Don't you worry about that. He is frightened of an ant. He says the moon pulls the ocean back. The moon? Sometimes the sun pulls too. He says that around the islands the tides make funnels that can swallow boats whole. We aren't going anywhere near there, dear. We're just on the beach. Marie Laurey unwinds her scarf and Madame Manec takes it. Briny, weedy, pewter-colored salt air slips down her collar. Madame? Yes? What do I do? Just walk. She walks. Now there are cold round pebbles beneath her feet. Now crackling weeds. Now something smoother, wet, unwrinkled sand. She bends and spreads her fingers. It's like cold silk, cold, sumptuous silk onto which the sea has laid offerings. Pebbles, shells, barnacles, tiny slips of wrack. Her fingers dig and reach. The drops of rain touch the back of her neck. the back of her hands. The sand pulls the heat from her fingertips, from the soles of her feet. A months-old knot inside Marie Laure begins to loosen. She moves along the tide line, crawling almost at first, and imagines the beach stretching off in either direction, ringing the promontory, embracing the outer islands, the whole filigreed tracery of the Breton coastline, with its wild capes and crumbling batteries and vine-choked ruins. She imagines the walled city behind her, its soaring ramparts, its puzzle of streets, and all of it suddenly as small as Papa's model. But what surrounds the model is not something her father conveyed to her. What's beyond the model is the most compelling thing. A flock of gulls squalls overhead. Each of the 100,000 tiny grains of sand in her fist grinds against its neighbor. She feels her father pick her up and spin her around 3 times. No occupation soldier comes to arrest them. No one even speaks to them. In 3 hours, Marie Laure's numb fingers discover a stranded jellyfish, an encrusted buoy, and 1,000 polished stones. She wades to her knees and soaks the hem of her dress. When Madame Manec finally leads her, damp and dazzled, back to the Rue Vaudreuil, Marie Laure climbs all 5 flights and raps on the door of Etienne's study and stands before him, wet sand stuck all over her face. "You were gone a long time," he whispers. "I worried." "Here, uncle." From her pockets she brings up shells, barnacles, cowries, 13 lumps of quartz gritty with sand. "I brought you this, and this, and this, and this." Lapidary. Beverage break. All right. In 3 months, Sergeant Major von Rumpel has traveled to Berlin and Stuttgart. He has assessed the value of 100 confiscated rings, a dozen diamond bracelets, a Latvian cigarette case in which a lozenge of blue topaz twinkled. Now, back in Paris, he has slept at the Grand Hotel for a week and sent forth his queries like birds. Every night the moment returns to him, when he clasped that pear-shaped diamond between his thumb and forefinger, made huge by the lens of his loupe, and believed he held the 133-carat sea of flames. He stared into the stone's ice-blue interior, where miniature mountain ranges seemed to send back fire, crimsons and corals and violets, polygons of color twinkling and coruscating as he rotated it. And he almost convinced himself that the stories were true, that centuries ago a sultan's son wore a crown that blinded visitors, that the keeper of the diamond could never die, that the fabled stone had caromed down through the pegs of history and dropped into his palm. There was joy in that moment, triumph, but an unexpected fear mixed with it. The stone looked like something enchanted, not meant for human eyes, an object that, once looked at, could never be forgotten. But eventually reason won out. The joints of the diamond's facets were not quite as sharp as they should have been, the girdle just slightly waxy. More telling, the stone betrayed no delicate cracks, no pinpoints, not a single inclusion. A real diamond, his father used to say, is never entirely free of inclusions. A real diamond is never perfect. Had he expected it to be real, to be kept precisely where he wished it would be, to win such a victory in a single day? Of course not. One might think von Rumpel would be frustrated. But he is not. On the contrary, he feels quite hopeful. The museum would never have commissioned such a high-quality fake if they did not possess the real thing somewhere. Over the past weeks in Paris, in the hours between other tasks, he has narrowed a list of 7 lapidaries to 3, then to 1, a half-Algerian named Dupont, who came of age cutting opal. It appears Dupont was making money before the war by faceting spinels into false diamonds for dowagers and baronesses, also for museums. One February midnight, von Rumpel lets himself into Dupont's fastidious shop not far from the Sacré-Cœur. He examines a copy of Streeter's Precious Stones and Gems, drawings of cleavage panes, trigonometric. I am so sorry. Trigonometric charts used for faceting. There we go. When he finds several painstaking iterations of a mold that match exactly the size and pear-cut shape of the stone in the vault at the museum, he knows that he has his man. At Von Rumpel's request, DuPont is furnished with forged food ration tickets. Now Von Rumpel waits. He prepares his questions. Did you make other replicas? How many? Do you know who has them now? On the last day of February 1941, a dapper little Gestapo man comes to him with the news that the unwitting DuPont has tried to use the forged tickets. He has been arrested. Kinderlicht. Child's play. It's an attractive and drizzly winter's night. Scraps of melting snow shored up against the edges of the Place de Concorde. The city looking ghostly, its windows jeweled with raindrops. A close-cropped corporal checks Von Rumpel's identification and points him not to a cell, but to a high-ceilinged, third-story office, where a typist sits behind a desk. On the wall behind her, a painted wisteria vine frays into a tangled modernist spray of color that makes Von Rumpel uneasy. DuPont is cuffed to a cheap dining chair in the center of the room. His face has the color and polish of tropical wood. Von Rumpel expected a melange of fear, indignation, and hunger, but DuPont sits upright. One of the lenses of his eyeglasses is already fractured, but otherwise he looks well enough. The typist twists her cigarette into an ashtray, a bright red smear of lipstick on its butt. The ashtray is full, 50 stubs squashed in there, limbless, somehow gory. You can go, says Von Rumpel, nodding at her, and levels his attention on the lapidary. He cannot speak German, sir. We will be fine, he says in French. Shut the door, please. DuPont looks up, some gland within him leaching courage onto his blood. Von Rumpel does not have to force the smile. It comes easily enough. He hopes for names, but all he needs is a number. Dearest Marie-Laure, we are in Germany now, and it is fine. I've managed to find an angel who will try to get this to you. The winter firs and alders are very beautiful here, and you are not going to believe this, but you will have to trust me. They serve us wonderful food. First class, quail and duck and stewed rabbit, chicken legs and potatoes fried with bacon and apricot tarts, boiled beef with carrots, coq au vin on rice, plum tarts, fruits and creme glacée, as much as we can eat. I so look forward to the meals. Be polite to your uncle and madame too. Thank them for reading this to you, and know that I am always with you, that I am right beside you. Your Papa. Entropy. For a week, the dead prisoner remains strapped to the stake in the courtyard, his flesh frozen gray. Boys stop and ask the corpse directions. Someone dresses him in a cartridge belt and helmet. After several days, a pair of crows take to standing on his shoulders, chiseling away with their beaks, and eventually the custodian comes out with 2 third-year boys, and they hack the corpse's feet out of the ice with a maul and tip him into a cart and roll him away. 3 times in 9 days, Frederick is chosen as the weakest in-field exercises. Bastien walks out farther than ever and counts more quickly than ever, so that Frederick has to run 400 or 500 yards, often through deep snow, and the boys race after him as if their lives depend on it. Each time he is caught, each time he is drubbed while Bastien looks on, each time Werner does nothing to stop it. Frederick lasts 7 blows before falling, then 6, then 3. He never cries out and never asks to leave, and in this particular seems to make the commandant quake with homicidal frustration. Frederick's dreaminess, his otherness, it's on him like a scent, and everyone can smell it. Werner tries to lose himself in his work in Hauptmann's lab. He has constructed a prototype of the transceiver, and tests fuses and valves and handsets and plugs. But even in those late hours, it is as if the sky has dimmed and the school has become a darker, ever more diabolical place. His stomach bothers him. He gets diarrhea. He wakes in distant quarters of the night and sees Frederick in his bedroom in Berlin, wearing his eyeglasses and necktie, freeing trapped birds from the pages of a massive book. You're a smart boy. You'll do well. One evening when Hauptmann is down the hall in his office, Werner glances over at imperious, sleepy Volkheimer in the corner and says, "That prisoner." Volkheimer blinks, stone turning to flesh. They do that every year. He takes off his cap and runs one hand over the dense stubble of his hair. They say he's a Pole, a Red, a Cossack. He stole liquor or kerosene or money. Every year it's the same. Under the seams of the hour, boys struggle in a dozen different arenas, 400 children crawling along the edge of a razor. Always the same phrase, too, Volkheimer adds, circling the drain. But was it decent to leave him out there like that, even after he was dead? Decency does not matter to them. When Hauptmann's crisp boot heels come clicking into the room, and Volkheimer leans back into the corner, and his eye sockets refill with shadow, and Werner does not have the chance to ask him which them he means. Boys leave dead mice in Frederick's boots. They call him a poof, blowjob, countless other juvenile sobriquets. Twice, a fifth year takes Frederick's field glasses and smears the lenses with excrement. Werner tells himself that he tries. Every night he polishes Frederick's boots for him until they shine a foot deep. One less reason for a bunkmaster or bastion or an upperclassman to jump on him. Sunday mornings in the refectory, they sit quietly in a sunbeam and Werner helps him with his schoolwork. Frederick whispers that in the spring he hopes to find skylark nests in the grasses outside the school walls. Once he lifts his pencil and stares into space and says, "Lesser spotted woodpecker," and Werner hears a bird's distant thrumming travel across the grounds and through the wall. In technical sciences, Dr. Hauptmann introduces the laws of thermodynamics. Entropy. Who can say what that is? The boys hunch over their desks. No one raises a hand. Hauptmann stalks the rows. Werner tries not to twitch a single muscle. Fenning. Entropy is the degree of randomness or disorder in a system, Doctor. His eyes fix on Werner's for a heartbeat, a glance both warm and chilling. Disorder. You hear the commandant say it. You hear your bunkmaster say it. There must be order. Life is chaos, gentlemen, and what we represent is an ordering to that chaos, even down to the genes. We are ordering the evolution of the species, winnowing out the inferior, the unruly, the chaff. This is the great project of the Reich, the greatest project human beings have ever. Hauptmann writes on the blackboard. The cadets inscribe the words into their composition books. The entropy of the system never decreases. Every process must by law decay. The rounds. Although Etienne continues to offer objections, Madame Manec walks Marie-Laure to the beach every morning. The girl knots her shoes herself, feels her way down the stairwell, and waits in the foyer with her cane in her fist while Madame Manec finishes up in the kitchen. "I can find my own way," Marie-Laure says the 5th time they step out. "You don't have to lead." 22 paces to the intersection with the Rue d'Estrées, 40 more to the little gate. 9 steps down, and she's on the sand, and the 20,000 sounds of the ocean engulf her. She collects pine cones dropped by trees, who knows how far away. Thick hanks of rope, slick globules of stranded polyps. Once a drowned sparrow. Her greatest pleasure is to walk through the north end of the beach at low tide and squat below an island that Madame Manec calls La Grande Baie, and let her fingers whisk around in the tide pools. Only then, with her toes and fingers in the cold sea, does her mind seem to fully leave her. Only then does she stop wondering how much of his letter was true, when he'll write again, why he has been imprisoned. She simply listens, hears, and breathes. Her bedroom fills with pebbles, sea glass, shells, 40 scallops along the windowsill, 61 whelks along the top of the armoire. She arranges them by species whenever she can, and then by size. Smallest on the left, largest on the right. She fills jars, pails, trays. The room assumes the smell of the sea. Most mornings after the beach, she makes the rounds with Madame Manec, going to the vegetable market, occasionally to the butcher's, then delivering food to whichever neighbors Madame Manec decides are the most in need. They climb an echoing stairwell, rap on a door. An old woman invites them in, asks for news, insists all three of them drink a thimbleful of sherry. Madame Manec's energy, Marie Laurey is learning, is extraordinary. She burgeons, shoes off stalks, wakes early, works late, concocts bisques without a drop of cream, loaves with less than a cup of flour. They clomp together through the narrow streets, Marie Laurey's hand on the back of Madame's apron, following the odors of her stews and cakes. In such moments, Madame seems like a great moving wall of rose bushes, thorny and fragrant and crackling with bees. Still warm bread to an ancient widow, named Madame Blanchard, soup to Monsieur Saget. Slowly, Marie Laurey's brain becomes a three-dimensional map in which exists glowing landmarks, a thick plane tree in the Place aux Herbes, 9 potted topiaries outside the Hotel Continental, 6 stairs up a passageway called the Rue Contemplée. Several days a week, Madame brings food to crazy Harold Bazin, a veteran of the Great War who sleeps in an alcove behind the library in sun or snow, who lost his nose, left ear, and eye to shell fire, who wears an enameled copper mask over half his face. Harold Bazin loves to talk about the walls and warlocks and pirates of St. Malo. Over the centuries, he tells Marie Laurey, the city ramparts have kept out bloodthirsty marauders, Romans, Celts, Norsemen, some say sea monsters. For 1,300 years, he says, the walls kept out bloodthirsty English sailors who would park their ships offshore and launch flaming projectiles at the houses, who would try to burn everything and starve everybody, who would stop at nothing to kill them all. The mothers of St. Malo, he says, used to tell their children, sit up straight, mind your manners, or an Englishman will come in the night to cut your throat. Howdy. Harold, please, Madame Manec says, you'll frighten her. In March, Etienne turns 60, and Madame Manec stews little clams with shallots and serves them alongside mushrooms and quarters of 2 hard-boiled eggs. The only 2 eggs, she reports, she could find in the city. Etienne talks in his soft voice about the eruption of Krakatoa, how in all of his earliest memories, ash from the East Indies turned the sunsets over St. Malo blood-red, big veins of crimson glowing above the sea every evening. And to Marie Laurey, her pockets lined with sand, her face aglow from wind, the occupation seems for a moment 1,000 miles away. She misses Papa, Paris, Dr. Giffard, the gardens, her books, her pine cones. All are holes in her life. But over these past few weeks, her existence has become tolerable. At least, out on the beaches, her privation and fear are rinsed away by wind and color and light. Most afternoons, after making the morning rounds with Madame, Marie Laurey sits on her bed with the window open and travels her hands over her father's model of the city. Her fingers pass the shipbuilders' sheds on the Rue des Chartres, pass Madame Rouel's bakery on the Rue Robert Succof. In her imagination, she hears the bakers sliding about on the flour-slick floor, moving in the way she imagines ice skaters must move, baking loaves in the same 400-year-old oven that Monsieur Rouel's great-great-grandfather used. Her fingers pass the cathedral steps. Here an old man clips roses in a garden. Here, beside the library, crazy Harold Bazin murmurs to himself as he peers with his one eye into an empty wine bottle. Here is the convent. Here is the restaurant Chez Shoes beside the fish market. Here is number 4 Rue Vaudreuil, its door slightly recessed, where downstairs Madame Manette kneels beside her bed, shoes off, rosary beads slipping through fingers, a prayer for practically every soul in the city. Here, in a 5th-floor room, Etienne walks beside his empty shelves, trailing his fingers over the places where his radios once stood. And somewhere beyond the borders of the model, beyond the borders of France, in a place her fingers cannot reach, her father sits in a cell, a dozen of his whittled models on a windowsill, a guard coming toward him with what she wants very badly to believe is a feast. Quail and duck and stewed rabbit, chicken legs and potatoes fried with bacon and apricot tarts. A dozen trays, a dozen platters, as much as he can eat. Midnight. Dr. Hauptmann's hounds bound through frozen fields beside the school, drops of quicksilver skittering through the white. Behind them comes Hauptmann in his fur cap, walking with short strides as though counting paces over some great distance. In the rear comes Werner, carrying the pair of transceivers he and Hauptmann have been testing for months. Hauptmann turns, his face bright. Nice spot here, good sight lines. Set it down, Fenning. I've sent our friend Volkheimer ahead. He's somewhere on the hill. Werner sees no tracks, only a humped swale of glitter in the moonlight, and the white forest beyond. He has the KX transmitter in an ammunition box, Hauptmann says. He is to conceal himself and broadcast steadily until we find him or his battery dies. Even I do not know where he is. He smacks his gloved hands together, and the dogs swirl around him, their breath smoking. 10 square kilometers. Locate the transmitter. Locate our friend. Werner looks out at the 10,000 snow-mantled trees. Out there, sir? Out there. Hauptmann draws a flask from his pocket and unscrews it without looking at it. This is the fun part, Fenning. Hauptmann stamps a clearing in the snow, and Werner sets up the first transceiver, uses measuring tape to pace off 200 meters, and sets up the second. He uncoils the grounding wires, raises the aerials, and switches them on. Already his fingers are numb. Try 80 meters, Fenning. Typically teams won't know what band to search, but for tonight, our first field test, we can cheat a little bit. Werner puts on the headset and fills his ears with static. He dials up the RF gain, adjusts the filter. Before long, he has tuned in both receivers to Volkheimer's transmitter, pinging along. I have him, sir. Hauptmann starts smiling in earnest. The dogs caper and sneeze with excitement. From his coat, he produces a grease pencil. Just do it on the radio. Teams won't always have paper, not in the field. Werner sketches out the equation on the metal casing of the transceiver and starts plugging in numbers. Hauptmann hands him a slide rule. In 2 minutes, Werner has a vector and a distance, 2.5 kilometers. And the map? Hauptmann's little aristocratic face gleams with pleasure. Werner uses a protractor and compass to draw the lines. Lead on, Fenning. Werner folds the map into his coat pocket, packs up the transceivers, and carries one in each hand like matching suitcases. Tiny snow crystals sift down through the moonlight. Soon the school and its outbuildings look like toys on the white plain below. The moon slips lower, a half-lidded eye, and the dogs stick close to their master, mouths steaming, and Werner sweats. They drop into a ravine and climb out. 1 kilometer. 2. Sublimity, Hauptmann says, panting. You know what that is, Fenning? He's tipsy, animated, almost prattling. Never has Werner seen him like this. It's the instant when one thing is about to become something else. Day to night, caterpillar to butterfly, fawn to doe, experiment to result, boy into man. Far up a third climb, Werner unfolds the map and double-checks his bearings with a compass. Everywhere the silent trees gleam, no tracks except their own. The school is completely lost behind them. Shall I set out the transceivers again, sir? Hauptmann puts his fingers to his lips. Werner triangulates again and sees how close they are to his original reading. Under half a kilometer. He repacks the transceivers and picks up his pace. Hunting now, on the scent. All 3 dogs sensing it too. And Werner thinks, I have found a way in. I am solving it. The numbers are becoming real. And the trees unloading siftings of snow, and the dogs freeze and twitch their noses, locked on a scent, pointing as if at a pheasant. And Hauptmann holds up a palm, and finally Werner, coming up through a gap of trees, laboring as he carries the big cases, sees the form of a man lying face up in the snow, transmitter at his feet, antenna rising into the low branches. The giant. The dogs tremble in their stances. Hauptmann keeps his palm up. With his other hand he unholsters his pistol. This close, Fenning. You cannot hesitate. Volkheimer's left side faces them. Werner can see the vapor of his breath rise and disperse. Hauptmann aims his Walther right at Volkheimer, and for a long and startling moment, Werner is certain that his teacher is about to shoot the boy, that they are in grave danger, every single cadet, and he cannot help but hear Jutta as she stood beside the canal. Is it right to do something only because everyone else is doing it? Something in Werner's soul shuts its scaly eyes, and the little professor raises his pistol and fires it into the sky. Volkheimer leaps immediately into a squat, his head coming around as the hounds release toward him, and Werner's heart feels as if it has been blown to pieces in his chest. Volkheimer's arms come up as the dogs charge him, but they know him, and they are leaping on him in play, barking and scampering, and Werner watches the huge boy throw off the dogs as if they were house cats. Dr. Hauptmann laughs. His pistol smokes, and he takes a long drink from his flask and passes it to Werner, and Werner puts it to his lips. He has pleased his professor, after all, and the transceivers work. He is out in the luminous, starlit night, feeling the stinging glow of brandy flow into his gut. This, says Hauptmann, is what we're doing with the triangles. The dogs circle and duck and romp. Hauptmann relieves himself beneath the trees. Volkheimer trudges toward Werner, lugging the big KX transmitter. He grows ever larger. He rests a huge mittened hand on Werner's cap. It's only numbers, he says quietly enough that Hauptmann cannot hear. Pure math, cadet, adds Werner, mimicking Hauptmann's clipped accent. He presses his gloved fingertips together, all 5 to 5. You have to accustom yourself to thinking this way. It is the first time Werner has heard Volkheimer laugh, and his countenance changes. He becomes less menacing, more like a benevolent, humongous child, more like the person he becomes when he listens to music. All the next day, the pleasure of his success lingers in Werner's blood, the memory of how it almost seemed holy to him to walk beside big Volkheimer back to the castle, down through the frozen trees, past the rooms of sleeping boys ranked like gold bars in strong rooms. Werner felt an almost fatherly protectiveness for the others as he undressed beside his bunk, as lumbering Volkheimer continued on toward the dormitories of the upperclassmen, an ogre among angels, a keeper crossing a field of gravestones at night. The book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. In case, Ishmael, you're still here. All right. Proposal. Oh, Hubert, I didn't know you were back there. Proposal. Marie Laure sits in her customary spot in the corner of the kitchen, closest to the fireplace, and listens to the friends of Madame Manec complain. The price of mackerel, says Madame Fontenot. You'd think they had to sail to Japan for it. I cannot remember, says Madame Hebrard, the postmistress, what a proper plum tastes like. And these ridiculous shoe ration coupons, says Madame Ruelle, the baker's wife. Theo has number 3,501, and they haven't even called 400. It's not just the brothels out on the Rue Thenvrande anymore. They're giving all the summer apartments to the freelancers. Big Claude and his wife are all getting extra fat. Damn Boches have their lights on all day. I cannot bear one more night stuck indoors with my husband. 9 of them sit around the square table, knees pressed to knees. Ration card restrictions, abysmal puddings, the deteriorating quality of fingernail varnish. These are crimes they feel in their souls. To hear so many of them in a room together confuses and excites Marie Laure. They are giddy when they should be serious, somber after jokes. Madame Herbrod cries over the non-availability of Demerara sugar. Another woman's complaint about tobacco disintegrates mid-sentence into hysterics about the phenomenal size of the perfumer's backside. They smell of stale bread, of stuffy living rooms crammed with dark Titanic Breton furnishings. Madame Ruel says, "So the Gautier girl wants to get married. The family has to melt all its jewelry to get the gold for the wedding ring. The gold gets taxed 30% by occupation authorities. Then the jeweler's work is taxed another 30%. By the time they've paid him, there's no ring left. The exchange rate is a farce, the price of carrots indefensible. Duplicity lives everywhere." Eventually, Madame Manec deadbolts the kitchen door and clears her throat. The women fall quiet. "We're the ones who make their world run," Madame Manec says. "You, Madame Gibault, your son repairs their shoes. Madame Herbrod, you and your daughter sort their mail. And you, Madame Ruel, your bakery makes much of their bread." The air stretches tight. Marie Laure has the sense that they are watching someone slide onto thin ice or hold a palm over a flame. "What are you saying?" "That we do something." "Put bombs in their shoes? Poop in their bread dough?" Brittle laughter. "Nothing so bold as all that, but we could do smaller things, simpler things." "Like what?" "First, I need to know if you are willing." A charged silence ensues. Marie Laure can feel them all poised there. 9 minds swinging slowly around. She thinks of her father, imprisoned for what? And aches. 2 women leave, claiming obligations involving grandchildren. Others tug at their blouses and rattle their chairs as though the temperature of the kitchen has gone up. 6 remain. Marie Laure sits among them, wondering who will cave, who will tattle, who will be the bravest, who will lie on her back and let her last breath curl up to the ceiling as a curse upon the invaders. You have other friends. "Look out, Pusswood!" Martin Burkhardt yells at Frederick across the squad. "I'm coming for you tonight." He convulses his pelvis manically. Someone defecates on Frederick's bunk. Werner hears Volkheimer's voice. Decency does not matter to them. "Bed shitter," spits a boy. "Bring me my boots." Frederick pretends not to hear. Night after night, Werner retreats into Hauptmann's laboratory. 3 times now they have gone out into the snow to track down Volkheimer's transmitter, and each time they have found him more directly. During the most recent field test, Werner managed to set up the transceivers, find the transmission, and plot Volkheimer's location on the map in under 5 minutes. Hauptmann promises trips to Berlin. He unrolls schematics from an electronics factory in Austria and says, "Several ministries have demonstrated enthusiasm for our project." Werner is succeeding. He's being loyal. He is being what everybody agrees is good, and yet every time he wakes and buttons his tunic, he feels he is betraying something. One night he and Volkheimer trudge back through the slush, Volkheimer carrying the transmitter, both receivers, and the folded antenna under one arm. Werner walks behind, content to be in his shadow. The trees drip, their branches seem moments away from erupting into bloom. Spring. In 2 more months, Volkheimer will be given his commission and go to war. They stop a moment so Volkheimer can rest, and Werner bends to examine one of the transceivers, draws a little screwdriver from his pocket and tightens a loose hinge plate. Volkheimer looks down at him with great tenderness. "What you could be," he says. That night Werner climbs into bed and stares up at the underside of Frederick's mattress. A warm wind blows against the castle, and somewhere a shutter bangs and snow melt trickles down the long downspouts. As quietly as he can, he whispers, "Are you awake?" Frederick leans over the side of his bunk, and for a moment in the nearly complete darkness, Werner believes that they will finally say to each other what they have not been able to say. "You could go home, you know. To Berlin. Leave this place." Frederick only blinks. "Your mother wouldn't mind. She'd probably like to have you around. Fanny, too, just for a month, even a week. As soon as you leave, the cadets will let up, and by the time you return, they'll have moved on to someone else. Your father wouldn't even have to know." But Frederick tips back into his bed, and Werner can no longer see him. His voice comes reflecting down from the ceiling. "Maybe it'd be better if we weren't friends anymore, Werner." Too loud. Dangerously loud. "I know it's a liability, walking with me, eating with me, always folding my clothes and shining my boots and tutoring me. You have your studies to think of." Werner clenches his eyes. A memory of his attic bedroom swamps him. Clicking of mouse feet in the walls, sleet tapping the window. The ceiling so sloped he could only stand one spot closest to the door. And the feeling that somewhere just behind this vision, ranged like spectators in a gallery, his mother and father and the Frenchman from the radio were all watching him through the rattling window to see what he would do. He sees Juta's crestfallen face, bent over the pieces of their broken radio. He has the sensation that something huge and empty is about to devour them all. "That's not what I meant," Werner says into his blanket, but Frederick says nothing more, and both boys lie motionless for a long time, watching the blue spokes of moonlight rotate through the room. Old Ladies' Resistance Club. Madame Ruelle, the baker's wife, a pretty-voiced woman who smells mostly of yeast but also sometimes of face powder or the sweet perfume of sliced apples, straps a stepladder to the roof of her husband's car and drives the Route de Carnetan at dusk with Madame Giboux and rearranges road signs with a ratchet set. They return drunk and laughing to the kitchen of No. 4 Rue Vaudreuil. "Dinan is now 20 kilometers to the north," says Madame Ruelle, "right in the middle of the sea." 3 days later, Madame Fontenot overhears that the German garrison commander is allergic to goldenrod. Madame Carré, the florist, tucks great fistfuls of it into an arrangement headed for the chateau. The women funnel a shipment of rayon to the wrong destination. They intentionally misprint a train timetable. Madame Hebard, the postmistress, slides an important-looking letter from Berlin into her underpants, takes it home, and starts her evening fire with it. They come spilling into Etienne's kitchen with gleeful reports that someone has heard the garrison commander sneezing, or that the dog shit placed on a brothel doorstep reached the target of a German shoe bottom perfectly. Madame Manec pours sherry or cider or muscadet. Someone sits stationed by the door to serve as sentry. Small and stooped Madame Fontenot boasts that she tied up the switchboard at the chateau for an hour. Dowdy and strapping Madame Gibault says that she helped her grandsons paint a stray dog the colors of the French flag and sent it running through the Palais Chateaubriand. The women cackle, thrilled. "What can I do?" asks the ancient widow, Madame Blanchard. "I want to do something." Madame Manec asks everyone to give Madame Blanchard their money. "You'll get it back," she says. "Don't worry. Now, Madame Blanchard, you have had beautiful handwriting all your life. Take this fountain pen of Master Etienne's. Now, on every 5-franc note, I want you to write 'Free France Now.' No one can afford to destroy money, right? Once everyone has spent their bills, our little message will go out all over Brittany." The women clap. Madame Blanchard squeezes Madame Manec's hand and wheezes and blinks her glossy eyes in pleasure. Sometimes Etienne comes down grumbling, one shoe on, and the whole kitchen goes quiet while Madame Manec fixes his tea and sets it on a tray, and Etienne carries it back upstairs. Then the women start up again, scheming, gabbling. Madame Manec brushes Marie Laurey's hair in long, absent-minded strokes. 76 years old, she whispers, and I can still feel like this, like a little girl with stars in my eyes. Diagnosis. The military doctor takes Sergeant Major von Rumpel's temperature, inflates the blood pressure cuff, examines his throat with a penlight. This very morning von Rumpel inspected a 15th century Davenport and supervised its installment onto a rail car meant for Marshal Groening's hunting lodge. The private who brought it to him described plundering the villa they took it from. He called it shopping. The Davenport makes von Rumpel think of an 18th century Dutch tobacco box made out of brass and copper and encrusted with tiny diamonds that he examined earlier this week, and the tobacco box sends his thoughts, as inexorably as gravity, back to the sea of flames. In his weaker moments, he imagines walking in some future hour between arcades of pillars in the great Führer Museum at Linz. I did it. His heels clacking smartly on the marble, twilight cascading through the high windows. He sees 1,000 crystalline display cases, so clear they seem to float above the floor. Inside them wait the world's mineral treasures, harvested from every hole in the globe, dioptas and topaz and amethyst and California rubellite. What was that phrase? Like stars flung off the brows of archangels. And in the very center of the gallery, a spotlight falls through the ceiling onto a pedestal. There, inside a glass cube, glows a small blue stone. The doctor asks von Rumpel to lower his trousers. Though the business of war has not let up for even a day, von Rumpel has been happy for months. His responsibilities are doubling. There are not, it turns out, a lot of Aryan diamond experts in the Reich. Just 3 weeks ago, outside a tiny sun-streaked station west of Bratislava, he examined an envelope full of perfectly clear, well-faceted stones. Behind him rumbled a truck full of paintings wrapped in paper and packed in straw. The guards whispered that a Rembrandt was in there, and pieces of a famous altarpiece from Krakow, all being sent to a salt mine somewhere deep beneath the Austrian village of Altalsi, where a mile-long tunnel drops into a glittering arcade filled with shelving 3 stories high, upon which the High Command is stacking Europe's finest art. They will assemble everything under one unassailable roof, a temple to the human endeavor. Visitors will marvel at it for 1,000 years. The doctor probes his groin. No pain? None. Nor here? None. It would have been too much to hope for names from the lapidary in Paris. Dupont, after all, would not have known who had been given the replicas of the diamond. He had no insight into the last-second safeguards of the museum. But Dupont was of service nonetheless. Von Rumpel needed a number, and he got it. 3. The doctor says, "You may dress," and washes his hands at a sink. In the 2 months leading up to the invasion of France, Dupont fashioned 3 replicas for the museum. Did he use the real diamond to make them? He used a casting. He never saw the real diamond. Von Rumpel believed him. 3 replicas, plus the real one, somewhere on this planet among its sextillion grains of sand. 4 stones, one of them in the basement of the museum, locked in a safe. 3 more to find. There are moments when Von Rumpel feels impatience rising in him like bile, but he forces himself to swallow it back. It will come. He buckles his belt. The doctor says, "We need to take a biopsy. You will want to telephone your wife." Weakest, number 3. The scales of cruelty tip. Maybe Bastien exacts some final vendetta. Maybe Frederick goes looking for his only way out. All Werner knows for certain is that one April morning he wakes to find 3 inches of slush on the ground, and Frederick is not in his bunk. He does not show at breakfast, or poetics, or morning field exercises. Each story Werner hears contains its own flaws and contradictions, as though the truth is a machine whose gears are not meshing. First, he hears that a group of boys took Frederick out and set up torches in the snow, and told him to shoot the torches with his rifle, to prove he had adequate eyesight. Then, Werner hears that they brought him charts for eye exams, and when he could not read them, they force-fed the charts to him. But what does the truth matter in this place? Werner imagines 20 boys closing over Frederick's body like rats. He sees the fat, gleaming face of the commandant, throat spilling out of his collar, reclined like a king on some high-backed oak throne, while blood slowly fills the floor, rises past his ankles, past his knees. Werner skips lunch and walks in a daze to the school's infirmary. He's risking detention, or worse. It's a sunny, bright noon, but his heart is being crushed slowly in a vice. And everything is slow and hypnotic, and he watches his arm work as it pulls open the door, as if he's peering through several feet of blue water. A single bed with blood in it, blood on the pillow, and on the sheets, and even on the enameled metal of the frame. Pink rags in a basin, half-unrolled bandage on the floor. The nurse bustles over and grimaces at Werner. Outside of the kitchens, she is the only woman at the school. "Why so much blood?" he asks. She sets 4 fingers across her lips, debating perhaps whether to tell him or pretend she does not know, accusation or resignation or complicity. "Where is he?" "Leipzig, for surgery." She touches a round white button on her uniform with what might be an inconveniently trembling finger. Otherwise, her manner is entirely stern. "What happened? Shouldn't you be at noontime meal?" Each time he blinks, he sees the men of his childhood, laid-off miners drifting through the back alleys, men with hooks for fingers and vacuums for eyes. He sees Bastian standing over a smoking river, snow falling all around him. "Führer, Volk, Fatherland, steal your body, steal your soul." "When will he be back?" "Oh," she says, a soft enough word. She shakes her head. A blue soapbox on the table. Above it, a portrait of some foregone officer in a crumbling frame. Some previous boy sent through this place to die. Cadet? Werner has to sit on the bed. The nurse's face seems to occupy multiple distances. A mask atop a mask atop a mask. What is Jutta doing at this exact moment? Wiping the nose of some wailing newborn, or collecting newspapers, or listening to presentations from army nurses, or darning another sock? Praying for him? Believing in him? He thinks, I will never be able to tell her about this. Dearest Marie-Laure, the others in my cell are mostly kind. Some tell jokes. Here's one. Have you heard about the wire-marked exercise program? Yes, each morning you raise your hands above your head and leave them there. Ha ha! My angel has promised to deliver this letter for me at great risk. It is very safe and nice to be out of the gas house for a bit. We are building a road now, and the work is good. My body is getting stronger. Today I saw an oak tree disguised as a chestnut tree. I think it is called a chestnut oak. I would like very much to ask some of the botanists in the gardens about it when we get home. I hope you and Madame and Etienne will keep sending things. They say we will be allowed to receive 1 parcel each, so something has to get through eventually. I doubt they would let me keep any tools, but it would be wonderful if they would. You absolutely would not believe how pretty it is here, ma chérie, and how far we are from danger. I am incredibly safe as safe can be. Your Papa. Grotto. It's summer, and Marie-Laure is sitting in the alcove behind the library with Madame Manec and crazy Harold Bazin. Through his copper mask, through a mouthful of soup, Harold says, I want to show you something. He leads Marie-Laure and Madame Manec down what Marie-Laure thinks is the Rue de Boyer, though it could be the Rue Vincent de Gournay or the Rue des Haussées. They reach the base of the ramparts and turn right, following a lane Marie-Laure has not been on before. They descend 2 steps, pass through a curtain of hanging ivy, and Madame Manec says, Harold, please, what is this? The alley grows narrower and narrower until they must walk single file. The walls close on either side and then they stop. Marie-Laure can feel stone blocks mounting vertically on both sides to brush their shoulders. They seem to rise forever. If her father has built this alley into his model, her fingers have not discovered it yet. Harold rummages in his filthy trousers, breathing hard behind his mask. Where the wall of the rampart should be, on their left, Marie-Laure hears a lock give way. A gate creaks open. Watch your head, he says, and helps her through. They clamber down into a cramped, moist space that positively reeks of the sea. We're beneath the wall, 20 meters of granite on top of us. Madame says, Really, Harold, it's gloomy as a graveyard in here. But Marie-Laure ventures a bit farther, the soles of her shoes slipping, the floor angling down, and then her shoes touch water. Feel this, says Harold Bazin, and crouches and brings her hand to a curved wall which is completely studded with snails. Hundreds of them. Thousands. So many, she whispers. I don't know why. Maybe because they're safe from the gulls? Here, feel this. I'll turn it over. Hundreds of tiny, squirming hydraulic feet beneath a horny, ridged top. A sea star. Blue mussels right here, and here's a dead stone crab. Can you feel his claw? Watch your head now. The surf breaks nearby. Water purls past her shoes. Marie-Laure wades forward. The floor of the room is sandy, the water barely ankle deep. From what she can tell, it's a low grotto, maybe 4 yards long and half as wide, shaped like a loaf of bread. At the far end is a thick grate, through which lustrous, clear sea wind washes. Her fingertips discover barnacles, weeds, 1,000 more snails. What is this place? Remember I told you about the dogs of the watch? A long time ago. City kennel keepers would keep mastiffs in here, dogs as big as horses. At night, a curfew bell would ring and the dogs would be let loose onto the beaches to eat any sailor who dared come ashore. Somewhere beneath those mussels is a stone with the date 1165 scratched into it. But the water? Even at the highest tides, it doesn't get more than waist deep. Back then, the tides might have been even lower. We used to play in here as boys, me and your grandfather, sometimes your great-uncle too. The tide flows past their feet. Everywhere mussels click and sigh. She thinks of the wild old seamen who lived in this town, smugglers and pirates, sailing over the dark seas, winding their ships between 10,000 reefs. Harold, we should go now, calls Madame Manec, her voice echoing. This is no place for a young girl. Marie-Laure calls, It's fine, Madame. Hermit crabs, anemones, sending out a tiny jet of seawater when she pokes them. Galaxies of snails, a story of life imminent in each. Finally, Madame Manec coaxes them out of the kennel, and crazy Harold leads Marie-Laure back through the gate and locks it behind them. Before they reach the Place Broussais, Madame Manec walking out front, he taps Marie-Laure's shoulder. His whisper comes in her left ear. His breath smells like crushed insects. Could you find that place again, do you think? I think so. He puts something iron in her hand. Do you know what it is? Marie-Laure closes her fist. It's a key. Intoxicated. Every day, there is word of another victory, another advance. Russia collapses like an accordion. In October, the student body gathers around a big wireless to listen to the Führer declare Operation Typhoon. German companies plant flags miles from Moscow. Russia will be theirs. Werner is 15 now. A new boy sleeps in Frederick's bed. Sometimes at night, Werner sees Frederick when he's not there. His face appears over the edge of the bunk, or his silhouette presses binoculars to the window pane. Frederick, who did not die, but did not recover. Broken jaw, cracked skull, brain trauma. No one was punished, no one questioned. A blue automobile came to the school, and Frederick's mother got out and walked into the commandant's residence and emerged soon afterward, tilted against the weight of Frederick's duffel bag, looking very small. She climbed back into the car, and it drove away. Volkheimer is gone. There are stories that he's become a fearsome sergeant in the Wehrmacht, that he led a platoon into the last town on the road to Moscow, hacked off the fingers of dead Russians, and smoked them in a pipe. The newest crop of cadets grow wild in their urgency to prove themselves. They sprint, shout, hurl themselves over obstacles. In field exercises, they play a game where 10 boys get red armbands and 10 get black. The game ends when one team has all 20. It seems to Werner as if all the boys around him are intoxicated, as if at every meal the cadets fill their tin cups not with the cold mineralized water of Schopforta, but with a spirit that leaves them glazed and dazzled, as if they ward off a vast and inevitable tidal wave of anguish only by staying forever drunk on rigor and exercise and gleaming boot leather. The eyes of the most bull-headed boys radiate a shining determination. Every ounce of their attention has been trained to ferret out weakness. They study Werner with suspicion when he returns from Hauptmann's lab. They do not trust that he's an orphan, that he's often alone, that his accent carries a whisper of the French he learned as a child. "We are a volley of bullets," sing the newest cadets. "We are cannonballs. We are the tip of the sword." Werner thinks of home all the time. He misses the sound of rain on the zinc roof above his dormer, the feral energy of the orphans, the scratchy singing of Frau Elena as she rocks a baby in the parlor, the smell of the coking plant coming in under the dawn, the first reliable smell of every day. He mostly misses Jutta, her loyalty, her obstinacy, the way she always seems to recognize what is right. Though in Werner's weaker moments, he resents those same qualities in his sister. Perhaps she's the impurity in him, the static in his signal that the bullies can sense. Perhaps she's the only thing keeping him from surrendering totally. If you have a sister back home, you're supposed to think of her as a pretty girl in a propaganda poster, rosy-cheeked, brave, steadfast. She's whom you fight for, whom you die for. But Jutta? Jutta sends letters that the school censors black out almost completely. She asks questions that should not be asked. Only Werner's affiliation with Dr. Hauptmann, his privileged status as the favorite of the technical sciences professor, keeps him safe. A company in Berlin is producing their transceiver, and already some of their units are coming back from what Hauptmann calls the field, blown apart or burned or drowned in mud or defective, and Werner's job is to rebuild them while Hauptmann talks into his telephone or writes requisitions for replacement parts or spends whole fortnights away from the school. Weeks pass without a letter from Jutta. Werner writes 4 lines, a smattering of platitudes. "I am fine, I'm so busy," and hands it to the bunkmaster. Dread swamps him. "You have minds," Bastien murmurs one evening in the refectory, each boy hunching almost imperceptibly farther in over his food as the commandant's fingers graze the back of his uniform. "But minds are not to be trusted. Minds are always drifting toward ambiguity, toward questions, when what you really need is certainty, purpose, clarity. Do not trust your minds." Werner sits in the lab late at night, alone again, and trolls the frequencies of the Grunding tube radio that Volkheimer used to borrow from Hauptmann's office, searching for music, for echoes, for what, he's not sure. He sees circuits break apart and reform. He sees Frederick staring into his book of birds. He sees the furor of the mines at Zollverein, the shunting cars, the banging locks, the trundling conveyors, smokestacks silting the sky day and night. He sees Jutta slashing back and forth with a lit torch as darkness encroaches from all sides. Wind presses against the walls of the lab. Wind, the commandant used to remind them, that comes all the way from Russia, a Cossack wind. The wind of candle-eating barbarians with hogs' heads who will stop at nothing to drink the blood of German girls, gorillas who must be wiped off the earth. Static, static, are you there? Finally, he shuts off the radio. Into the stillness come the voices of his masters, echoing from on the inside of his head while memory speaks from the other. Open your eyes and see what you can with them before they close forever. Good evening, Crystal. Thank you for joining us. The Blade and the Whelk. The Hotel Dieu dining room is big and somber and full of people talking about U-boats off Gibraltar and the inequities of currency exchange and four-stroke marine diesel engines. Madame Manec orders 2 bowls of chowder that she and Marie Laure promptly finish. She says she does not know what to do next. Should they keep waiting? So she orders 2 more. At last, a man in rustling clothing sits down with them. You are sure your name is Madame Walter? Madame Manec says, You are sure your name is Renée? A pause. And her? My accomplice. She can tell if someone is lying just by hearing him speak. He laughs. They talk about the weather. Sea air exudes from the man's clothes, as if he has been blown here by a gale. While he talks, he makes ungainly movements and bumps the table so that the spoon clatters in their bowls. Finally he says, We admire your efforts, madame. The man who calls himself Renée starts talking extremely softly. Marie Laure catches only phrases. Look for special insignia on their license plates. WH for Army, WL for Air Force, WM for Navy. And you could note, or find someone who could, every vessel that comes in and out of the harbor. This information is very much in demand. Madame Manec is quiet. If more is said that Marie Laure cannot overhear, if there is a pantomime going on between them, notes passed, stratagems agreed upon, she cannot say. Some level of accord is reached, and soon enough she and Madame Manec are back in the kitchen at No. 4 Rue Vaudreuil. Madame Manec clatters around in the cellar and hauls up canning supplies. This very morning, she announces, she has managed to procure what might be the last 2 crates of peaches in France. She hums as she helps Marie Laure with the peeler. Madame. Yes, Marie. What is a pseudonym? It is a fake name, an alternate name. If I were to have one, what sort of name could I choose? Well, says Madame Manec, she pits and quarters another peach. You can be anything, really. You can be the mermaid, if you like, or Daisy, Violet. How about the Whelk? I think I would like to be the Whelk. The Whelk. That is an excellent pseudonym. And you, madame, what would you be? Me? Madame Manec's knife pauses. Crickets sing in the cellar. I think I would like to be the Blade. The Blade? Yes. The perfume of the peaches makes a bright, ruddy sound. The Blade? Repeats Marie Laure. Then they both start laughing. Dear Werner, why don't you write? Redacted. The foundries run day and night, and the stacks never stop smoking, and it's been cold here, so everyone burns everything to stay warm. Sawdust, hard coal, soft coal, lime, garbage, war widows, redacted, and every day there are more. I'm working at the laundry with the twins, Hannah and Suzanne, and Claudia Forster. You remember her. We're mending tunics and trousers mostly. I'm getting better with a needle, so at least I'm not pricking myself all the time. Right now I just finished my homework. Do you have homework? There are fabric shortages and people bring in slip covers, curtains, old coats. Anything that can be used, they say, must be used. Just like all of us here. Ha! I found this under your old cot. Seems like you could use it. Love, Yuta. Inside the homemade envelope waits Werner's childhood notebook, his handwriting across the cover. Questions. Across its pages swarm boyhood drawings, inventions, an electric bed heater he wanted to build for Frau Elena, a bicycle with chains to drive both wheels. Can magnets affect liquids? Why do boats float? Why do we feel dizzy when we spin? A dozen empty pages at the back, juvenile enough, presumably, to make it past the censor. Around him sounds the din of boots, the clatter of rifles, stalks on the ground, barrels against the wall. Grab cups off hooks, plates off racks. Queue up for boiled beef. Over him breaks a wave of homesickness so acute that he has to clamp his eyes. Alive before you die. Madame Manec goes into Etienne's study on the 5th floor. Marie-Laure listens on the stairs. You could help, Madame says. Someone, likely Madame, opens a window and the bright air of the sea washes onto the landing, stirring everything. Etienne's curtains, his papers, his dust. Marie-Laure's longing for her father. Etienne says, Please, Madame, close the window. They are rounding up blackout offenders. The window stays open. Marie-Laure creeps down another stair. How do you know when whom they round up, Etienne? A woman in Rennes was given 9 months in prison for naming one of her hogs Goebbels. Do you know that? A palm reader in Cancale was shot for predicting de Gaulle would return in the spring. Shot! Those are only rumors, Madame. Madame Hebrard says that a Dinard man, a grandfather, Etienne, was given 2 years in prison for wearing the cross of Lorraine under his collar. I heard they're going to turn the whole city into a big ammunition dump. Her great-uncle laughs softly. It all sounds like something a sixth former would make up. Every rumor carries a seed of truth, Etienne. All of Etienne's adult life, Marie-Laure realizes, Madame Manec has tended his fears, skirted them, mitigated them. She creeps down one more stair. Madame Manec is saying, You know things, Etienne, about maps, tides, radios. It's already too dangerous. All those women in my house, people have eyes, Madame. Who? The perfumer, for one. Claude, she snorts. Little Claude is too busy smelling himself. Claude is not so little anymore. Even I can see his family gets more than the others. More meat, more electricity, more butter. I know how such prizes are won. Then help us, Etienne. I don't want to make trouble, Madame. Isn't doing nothing a kind of troublemaking? Doing nothing is doing nothing. Doing nothing is as good as collaborating. The wind gusts. In Marie-Laure's mind, it shifts and gleams, draws needles and thorns in the air, silver and then green and then silver again. I know ways, Madame Manec. What ways? Whom have you put your trust in? You have to trust someone sometime. If your same blood doesn't run in the arms and legs of the person you're next to, you can't trust anything. And even then, it's not a person you wish to fight, Madame. It's a system. How do you fight a system? You try. What would you have me do? Dig out that old thing in the attic. You used to know more about radios than anyone in town. Anyone in Brittany, perhaps. They've taken all of the receivers. Not all. People have hidden things everywhere. You'd only have to read numbers, is how I understand it. numbers on strips of paper. Someone, I don't know who, maybe Harold Bazin, will bring them to Madame Ruelle, and she'll collect them and bake the messages right into the bread, right into it. She laughs. To Marie Laure, her voice sounds 20 years younger. Harold Bazin. You are trusting Harold Bazin? You are cooking secret codes into bread? What fat kraut is going to eat those awful loaves? They take all the good flour for themselves. We bring home the bread, you transmit the numbers, then we burn the piece of paper. This is ridiculous. You are acting like children. It's better than not acting at all. Think of your nephew. Think of Marie Laure. Curtains flap and papers rustle, and the two adults have a standoff in the study. Marie Laure has crept so close to her great-uncle's doorway that she can touch the doorframe. Madame Manec says, "Don't you want to be alive before you die?" Marie is almost 14 years old, madame. Not so young, not during war. 14-year-olds die the same as anybody else. But I want 14 to be young. I want... Marie Laure scoots back a step. Have they seen her? She thinks of the stone kennel Crazy Harold Bazin led her to, the snails gathered in their multitudes. She thinks of the many times her father put her on his bicycle. She'd balance on the seat, and he would stand on the pedal, and they'd glide out into the roar of some Parisian boulevard. She'd hold his hips and bend her knees, and they'd fly between cars, down hills, through gauntlets of odor and noise and color. Etienne says, "I am going back to my book, madame. Shouldn't you be preparing dinner?" And with that, we will call it an evening. All right. How is everyone doing with the story so far? My apologies if I stumbled over some stuff this evening. My eyes got tired there for a second. So my YouTube name is Mimi, MIMI _ says SAYS _ hi, HI. Mimi says hi. That's my YouTube name. And the icon you'll see is me doing you'll see me doing the kissy duck face. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's partially it's tired, but also just the I don't know what it is, but the light, my ring light it makes my eyeballs like so like sticky sometimes. Thank you so much. Yes, it's my pleasure. I have really been enjoying reading to you guys. It's making me like rediscover why I love reading, first of all. But I'm so glad that you guys join us and let me read to you and get lost in the story. Even if you don't necessarily know what's going on, if you're brand new, I hope, I keep doing this, keep reading stories that are engaging and fun and, that are fun for you guys to listen to because they're fun for me to read. So, but, yeah, that's going to call us quits for the evening. Join me. I need to come up with like a lead out phrase or something like, join me next time. Mimi's Reading Corner. Oh my gosh. No, so, Ishmael, the readings are happening on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. It's the same time both times, 8 to 9:30, Tuesdays and Fridays. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying my voice is calming. I hear recordings of myself sometimes and I'm like, oh, uh. But if you find my voice calming, I'll take it. I'll take it. But yes, our readings are Tuesday nights, 8 to 9:30-ish, and Friday nights, 8 to 9:30-ish. So, but yeah. So I hope you guys are enjoying the story so far. And, good. Oh, Crystal, I'm glad you've enjoyed this. I've been enjoying it too, truly. You guys are very forgiving of me with some words that I trip over, and I very much appreciate that. But with that being said, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope you are staying safe and you are happy and healthy and in good company wherever you are. And I hope you all have a good night, get some sleep, and hydrate, please. Drink your... We're going to pretend this is water. Drink your water. And I will see you guys Friday night. Bye.